Hey, I'm Aidan, and this is my photography video on exposure. Now, exposure for a camera is made up of three things. One, being the shutter speed. Two, the ISO. And three is the aperture. Now, these things can all come into form, I guess, when you're taking a picture, because if you're overexposed, then the picture is going to come out really bright and it's just not going to look good. And if you're underexposed, it's going to be really dark and you're not going to be able to see much. But the correct exposure will give it a good picture. So for the perfect exposure, you're going to need a good shutter speed. And shutter speed, they're basically, how do I say this? They're given in fractions of like a second. So if I had a 130 shutter speed, the picture would be snapping at 1/30th of a second, which is pretty impressive, I think, for a camera. But the faster the shutter speed, the more you freeze time, I guess, when you're taking a picture, the more crisp, I guess, it is. And the more slower, like if I were to take a picture, and move it around with a slow shutter speed, it would capture everything and it would get really blurry. And so if we have, like if we're taking a picture of a waterfall, we could have a really high shutter speed, take a picture, and the water can be like all crisp, you can tell where the droplets are and everything. But if it's slow, you can see the water coming down and stuff. So next up is aperture, or I guess, in other words, f-stop. And this is the opening of your lens. So on the lens, you have an opening. It's right there. And that controls the amount of light that you can let in during a photo. And the hole can get really big or really small. And I mean, you can do all sorts of things with that. You can make the background darker, make it lighter, all stuff like that. And it could like control the shadows and stuff like that. But ISO stands for International Organization for Standardization. That's a mouthful. It means basically how fast light is absorbed onto your chip. Now, it's kind of like ISO, but aperture, my bad. But aperture is the amount of light it lets in. ISO is the amount it captures. And it means how fast, light is absorbed. It's true. But a high ISO is for very low light conditions, so like in a dark room or in a building, I guess. But low ISO is for like outside and stuff like that, I guess. And ISO, it's kind of strange. ISO, it's hard to explain, but the more ISO that you have, the more grainier, grainier your picture will be. The lower the ISO, the more defined, I guess, it'll be. And you can see most of the settings there on the bottom of your camera. When you look through this part, you should see like a gray bar and some yellow lines and some numbers, and that explains all your stuff down there. Your exposure, your aperture, your ISO, and then the exposure level. So that is my video on exposure. So see you later.